Hey, I'm Warren Sprouse, and you're on the Bible Forum. It is February, first Sunday in February. I want to say February 3rd. I think that's true, 2018. And we're looking at little snapshots of issues here under the topic of social issues. You have probably been aware for a number of months now that we are in the midst of a flu epidemic. Influenza is spreading across the country. A strain known as H3N2 is attacking people. I think there's another strain that's in there with it. It turns out that the medical people provided a shot made up to fight off another form of flu, influenza, and not this one, and so it's gonna go. But it's we do the best. You know, they never know which one's going to really strike. It seems to have impacted California in a very dynamic way. There's a huge number, apparently, of sick people out there that are straining the hospitals. The staff are being confronted with what could become California's worst flu season in a decade. A woman took her 88-year-old father, who lives in Redlands, to a nearby emergency room on January 6 and reported that it was standing room only. Many people were crammed into this smaller space, and these people were sneezing and coughing violently. She said it was like a flu war zone. Now, she's not a germaphobe, she claims, or anything like that. But she says being in this environment would quickly make you one. We had an abortion bill making the rounds through Congress in the last few weeks, months. This is a bill that would have outlawed abortions after 5 weeks of gestation. The House approved it. The Senate did not. I have an adopted grandson whose mother sought to abort him at about 5 months of gestation, 25 weeks. He's now 14 years old. He wears glasses. He has a cochlear implant. He's lost hearing. He has some other issues, from a slightly weaker immune system to some minor respiratory issues and some muscle weakness, especially in his legs. But other than that, this is a completely normal, sweet, gentle child. Last week, the Senate was unable to pass the bill that would have kept this child from his mother's attempt to kill him. She went for an abortion. He wouldn't die. They kept him alive. And weeks later, he was able to come home. The bill is known as the Pain Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. It fell short by 5 votes, 51 to 46. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said, quote, "There is no reason why this should be a partisan issue." And he says, "I hope that my Democratic colleagues," they're not Democratic, my Democrat, I wish they'd stop saying they're Democratic. These folks are not Democratic. Their Democrat colleagues will not obstruct the Senate from taking up this bill. 2 Republicans, both of them mothers, Susan Collins from Maine, Lisa Murkowski from Arkansas, voted against the bill. 3 Democrats, Joe Manchin, Bob Casey, Joe Donnelly, all voted for it. Nevertheless, the rest of the Senate Democrats opposed the bill. Now, the bill was based on scientific evidence that unborn babies at 20 weeks or more of gestation are capable of feeling pain. That means when the caustic solution is applied or the ripping and tearing of limbs begins, they can feel it. Alexandria DeSanctis at National Review argues that the senators who voted against the bill are evidence of the radical view so many, she said, legislators, I say citizens and mothers, have adopted when it comes to abortion. A group of pro-life advocates in Brooklyn, New York, coming from the Rock Church in Brooklyn, have been targeted for their ongoing sidewalk counseling and prayer and protest activities outside the Women's Medical Center abortion facility in Jamaica, Queens, New York. It's an abortion clinic. We've heard of this before. These pro-life advocates were charged by New York Attorney General Eric T. Schneiderman in a federal lawsuit accusing them of threats and violence against abortion clinic patients. The threat and the violence was their effort with their mouths to stop abortions from happening. Their efforts, perhaps in some cases with their bodies, to make it a little more difficult for them to get through. Nobody threw a punch. Nobody hit anybody with a stick. Special Counsel Martin Cannon of the Thomas More Society petitioned the court to dismiss the lawsuit largely on the grounds that the protesters were engaging in free speech. Lots of luck. Well, on January 29th, just past week, 2018, a federal judge dismissed the charges against these folks from the Rock Church, underscoring the words of their attorney, telling the participants that leafletting is a form of really protected speech and that sidewalks are recognized as the quintessential public forum. I say, bam! But here's the thing. Would that have taken place last year? I've been around long enough to notice the president, the party in power, and their values trickle down throughout the entire system. And sometimes otherwise good people will do some bad things just because they don't want to be different, they don't want to get in trouble, they don't want to get protested against, they don't want to get fired, things like that happen, or they don't want to look like they're out of step. And when there's leadership that stands up for some of these moral issues, then people feel the freedom to stand up and do it. And I wonder when this sort of thing happens in such a dramatic way, after all these years, if that's not part of the Trump trickle down. Just saying. Here's a shock, which I say with my tongue firmly in my cheek. A new peer-reviewed scientific study concludes the gender of researchers conducting certain lab experiments could be seriously impacting the results, pointing to the outcome often that these folks come up with that cannot be replicated later on. Published in this month's journal Science Advances, a research paper entitled Experimenter Gender and Replicability in Science, you say that, by 3 students at Uppsala University in Sweden found that, quote, more studies, especially clinical trials, are being reported without any mention of the gender of the experimenters. They found that of 100 articles published in high-ranking psychology journals in 2008, only 1/3 to 1/2 of the original findings were successfully replicated. They called it a, quote, replication crisis spreading through the annals of scientific inquiry, end of quote. The researchers, Colin Chapman, Christian Benedict, and Helgi Scholz, must be a Dutch name or something, found that that significant biases caused by the experimenter's gender may lead researchers to conclude that therapeutics or other interventions are either over-treating or under-treating a variety of conditions. And their conclusion, quote, bearing this in mind, this policy paper emphasizes the importance of reporting and controlling for experimenter gender in future research. The report found a replication crisis spreading throughout the annals of scientific inquiry. Who knew? You did, didn't you? Or you thought so. Things don't turn on their head that quickly. We're going along going, oh, boom, all of a sudden everything's going the other way. It doesn't work like that in real life. During President Trump's State of the Union address this past Tuesday night, January 30th, the American public got to meet an everyday hero. His name is Police Officer Ryan Holitz. You saw it. Officer Holitz and his wife Rebecca came into the spotlight after they graciously offered to adopt the baby of Crystal Champ, a homeless woman battling heroin addiction while she was 8 months pregnant. Now you do realize children that far along are influenced by those drugs as well. And no doubt this baby, having been born, went through some horrific physical pain. Last September, in what he described as an act of providence, Officer Holitz stumbled upon Crystal. Today she calls the Holitz her, quote, guardian angels, end of quote, because of the couple's decision to open their home to her baby, a baby they named Hope. Stories like Crystal's are increasingly common throughout the United States, but happy endings like baby Hope's are still far too rare. As President Trump pointed out, quote, in 2016 we lost 64,000 Americans to drug overdoses, 174 deaths per day, 7 per hour. It should be no surprise to find that these deaths are having a dramatic impact on the foster care system. Today, according to the Department of Health and Human Services, drug abuse is the #1 driver of children into foster care. In 2016, 92,000 children were removed from their homes because of a parent's drug abuse. These children make up 1/3 of the 437,500 children in foster care. In Florida, drug abuse is the single greatest factor contributing to children entering foster care. The number of children entering in that state has risen by 129% over the last 3 years. In Montana, Georgia, West Virginia, there have been drastic increases in the number of children entering foster care because of parental drug abuse. In Ohio, 1,000 more children spent last Christmas in foster care because of their parents' opioid addictions. And the prospects for children in foster care are grim. About 60% of the boys and half the girls end up in jail at some stage of their life. 1/3 of young adults who are homeless were once in foster care. As a former foster parent, I'm here to tell you, it's a tough road to hoe. And parents who take these children in need a lot of encouragement. They can do everything right, and these kids can still go the wrong way. We've had them in our home, and some were largely incorrigible. We had one who ran away on a regular basis from us and from his parents. It got so the parents would call me when he would run away. So I'd go get him, bring him back. They were just that sick of it. And I finally had to stop. Drugs, they don't hurt nobody.